pattern breaker. By the age of 10, Donald Trump had already begun to push himself to be a clear and compassionate advocate among his siblings, a characteristic that would define much of his future trajectory. His parents, competent and stable, ethically ensured him with an environment that, on one hand, afforded every material protection and, on the other, created an atmosphere where resourcefulness could easily provide great freedom. Though Donald had little reason to fear the future, his family was already financially mature. He nonetheless appeared determined to stake out his own territory, whether through activeness at his family's private beach club or later in life through a series of considered or due-diligent decisions which kept him always as the hallmark of future possibilities. In the suburban quiet of Queens, Donald Trump's exuberant energy did not go unnoticed. His early achievements suggested a pattern of risk-taking, and so path-breaking or success, whether it was pressing upon the limits to probe and discover breakthroughs with his social competition, his brothers, or navigating the social patterns of a private club where his father's reputation status gave him some extension of authority or determination, say, as a proxy son. It was additionally in these years which rumors began to surface about Donald's forthrightness with others, especially with his more flippant brother, Robert. The malicious intentions to sabotage and false accusations of bullying were perhaps a natural misanthropic extension of jealous parasitic types circling a highly conscious or highly engaged, and actually earnest working achiever. Such traits were typical of many children of resourcefulness, whose personalities were improved by parenting, where applying yourself to the actual existence is generally seen as mandatory for credible goodness, and limitations exist more as background static than hard hindrances. Yet while these implied early bodies of decisions might have been perceived as prima facie mania, they were also the extension of a mental faculty or mind which grasped early on that sacrifice and skillful competence, whether through charm, reliability, or sheer presence of mindful application, was necessary to navigating an uncertain or unstable existence. This is how it has always been, and this is how it'll always be. This relatively undefined at the time, instinctive drive toward competence would eventually direct Donald to the New York Military Academy, an institution designed to secure structure and contributions from boys of various backgrounds. It was here, in a domain that prized direction and reliability to others who are in need of it, not just the individual, that Donald's early sense of authoritative assertiveness grounded in verifiable and not schizo ethics was confronted by the carefully planned demands of collaborative military life. Yet even in the face of such high competence expectations, Donald's behavior was marked by an unorthodox, as difficult to forecast and interfere with, capability to maintain control over his own personality, which he intended for the world and by natural extension, control over his own narrative in the world. Despite a tangential expedition into sports, where his lackluster efforts failed to connect with stakeholders in the baseball sphere and soccer sphere, Donald managed to maneuver himself as an enriching leader in the academy, a positioning that reflected more his capability to navigate all-encompassing social friction in society and its body of explicit or implicit communities and units, than any formally defined achievement in leadership and management. The New York Military Academy, for all its efforts at cultivating direction or momentum, often revealed a system more concerned with appearing to make headway than to make headway. Donald's brief time as captain, a seemingly elevated position he assumed, not through any remarkable display of leadership potential or talent, but more as a product of his father's pressure, underscored this. When he was reassigned after a sergeant's misconduct, Donald did not sulk or retreat into obscurity. Rather, he accepted a diminished role, being honest about not having earned the elevated position and authority, and so didn't make a malicious scene or lash out in an essential tantrum, and damage innocent bystanders. He constructively opted to frame it as an advancement in working wisdom. This was a man who, even in the face of flanking and brutal surprises, knew how to maintain the trajectory of actual progress the existence makes accessible and nothing else. It is door-opening to eventually recognize that the New York Military Academy, like many institutions, prioritized outward order over meaningful change, i.e., it's not better late than never, it's rather, often the case, it's seemingly late and that's how you're going to receive this. Regardless of whether you have prima facie negative feelings about this or not, and you can take solace in the fact that you didn't have a choice when this recognition or epiphany was going to present itself. The emphasis on neatness no matter the context or consideration, and following the disconnected rigid framework towards an ever-strengthening mental dullness and literal idiocy in one's life, while important in creating a marketable semblance of discipline, did little to instill real character development, influential skills or leadership skills, inter alia or among other things. Yet, it was in these surroundings that Donald Trump learned to navigate the complex web of multiple snags, of institutional supremacy, indirectly and implicitly learning how to leverage interactions microly, and ongoing relationships macroly, and so sustain a fruiting public image, even when his actions did not live up to the initial standards expected of him. The Military Academy's graduation ceremony in 1964 was a defining moment. Although Donald Trump did not garner accolades, his classmates receiving honors while he was only acknowledged with a symbolic saber, he did not let the absence of recognition deter him. He understood, perhaps better than anyone, that real competence is not in the official titles or awards, but in the perception of success or breakthroughs. He was already a master of dealing with others, regardless of the outwardness of his formalized achievements. His military education, and his life thereafter, continued to reflect this key thread of knowledge. Donald Trump's later claims, whether about his athletic prowess, his potential baseball career, or his rejection of professional sports, were not so much fabrications as they were strategic embellishments and necessary damage control for one's personal life and by automatic extension their next of kin, inter alia. In a world where the visual can be more deterministic than actual merit, Donald Trump had humbly learned early on that creating the right narrative, the key explanations, was life-preserving, inter alia, if not a higher priority in society than living up to it. Trump's decision to attend Fordham University, despite his formerly lackluster academic showing, was another considered decision in his larger forecasting. It reflected a person who knew how to engage the feature of resourcefulness, making practical, family connections to secure elements, regardless of his initial capabilities or initial qualifications. The distinction between initial qualifications and confidence was one Donald found rooting depth in, and upon shallow analysis, while some might have viewed his focus as some lack of effort, it could just as easily be recognized as a practice in knowing what's mostly a priority to keep the focus mostly one-pointed and functional or effective. The ability to stay in the area of life, regardless of the projections surrounding you. In reviewing Donald Trump's youth in general, it is clear to see how his personality was crafted by both his family's support and the environments he mostly entered. He was not a person who thrived on strict or dull adherence to formal or initial rules, because all too often, rules are external limitations, are on the surface and so have marginal benefit and marginal protection to the person, nor was he someone who sought tangential validation through conventional or seemingly obvious means. Instead, He's a person who respects the value of maintaining a functionality of mind or presence of mind, not merely for himself, but to be mostly reliable towards the safety of others, how to remain not insane, no AWOL-ness from life duties to society, family and friends, and always moving up, gravity, or no gravity, even in circumstances when formal distinctions were up for seemingly authoritative debate and judgment. Zooming out, Donald Trump's early years were not defined by some nutritionless notion of some lack of disciplined effort, yet by a stable understanding of how to keep a firm grip on his own intended destination, effectively no matter the sacrifice.
Making me hot.
By liking and subscribing.